Hey everybody, this is Todd again, and today's tutorial is going to be a quick tutorial on animating a bouncing ball inside of Unreal, specifically in 5.2. Uh, Animating a bouncing ball is kind of a typical exercise that you'll do when you're learning animation, or if you're learning a program, whether it be Maya or Blender or Max or whatever it may be, Unreal, then it's always a good exercise to do just to get familiar with the tools of animation in that tool. So I thought it might be a good tutorial to do that. So all I've done is added in or opened up the basic third-person template project here. And then I went ahead and added a sphere. You can do that by just coming up here, shapes, and add a sphere. And then I just took this material that's on pretty much everything, this like little grid material, applied it to our ball, and then I baked the texture and then modified it so that it could be a little bit more high contrast. And so that's about it. But if you want to do that to follow along, great. If not, you can put whatever material you want on it. I just wanted the grid lines because we want to make this roll eventually so that you can see it actually rolling. If I come up here and go to selection mode, I can come down to animation mode. There are some other tools in here if you're going to be animating that are kind of helpful. There's constraints in here. You can add constraints. There's pivot mode and some other things that you can do in here as well. It opens up the anim details panel over here on the right and the anim outliner. Those are definitely helpful when you have controls. Like if I have a control rig in here, I'll see that in my anim outliner, and the details panel will show me all the attributes of that. And so that's pretty helpful. But I don't need any of this for today's exercise, so I'm just going to move this panel over here to the right, and we're just going to focus on animating using just the basic controls here. So now I'm going to come up here. You can do this up here just by clicking on that little icon and adding a level sequence. And then I'm just going to leave this at the default name and hit save. You can really just put this wherever you want and then save it. And then it adds our sequencer down here. And so now that I have our sequencer down here, I want to go over some project settings and hotkeys, if you will, that make it a little bit easier to animate, especially if you're coming from Maya or if you've animated in another package before. So first things first, let's go up to Edit. We're going to go to Edit Preferences. And in Edit Preferences, if I come up here and just type in middle, you'll see that invert middle mouse pan is checked. That obviously allows you to like click and move to the left, click and move to the right, and everything that you see in the viewport moves in the direction of your mouse. If you don't have this checked, then what it does is when you move to the left, it moves the camera to the left, which causes everything else to move to the right, which is kind of the opposite of the way it works in a lot of other programs. So that's why it is the way that it is, or that's why I like inverting it. Now if I type in marquee, this is another one I like. If I type in marquee, having these boxes checked allows you, and specifically today we're going to be working in the level sequence editor, which is right here. This allows having these checked. All these are unchecked by default. I check them because when I want to click and drag with my left mouse button, I do not want my camera to turn. I don't want to, start looking a different direction, especially if I'm animating to that camera or something. So I just want to have this like this, and that is really helpful. Hopefully you find it helpful as well. And then down here in the sequencer, this little eyeball icon, open up that. By default, this is checked. And what happens is when you have an object selected, or if you start changing objects, every single time you open it up or select an object, it's going to expand all of the nodes for that selection. I prefer to have this unchecked. So hopefully that is helpful to you as well. And then under the playback controls here, playback options, I like to keep the playhead in the playback range while I'm scrubbing. I don't want it to, go off and move past that. So right now you'll see that I can't go into the negatives here. I can only go just like this, which is exactly what I want. So that's perfect. I'm just going to leave it at that. and set that up. I do want to change my playback range to 85. Here, let's do this. Let's change this one to 85, and we can change this to 150 or whatever it was. And we'll just, no, let's change this to 85, and we'll leave it there. And you know what? I'll just change this to 0. Let's just keep it simple. So what you see is what you get. It's right there like that. And then if you, so now one thing that's a little weird is that if I hit spacebar and play, it just keeps playing all the way to 150 because even though I've set it down here, it up here still says that my range goes to 150 for this for the sequencer right now. So what I want to do is I want to go to frame 85, and then I'm going to right here say set playback end to the current position. And now you'll see that it's only one of 85. So now if I hit play and go like this, it just stops right there. So anyhow, something kind of helpful. Also, another thing is this, I like to have auto key on. So anytime you modify something, if this is checked, then it will set a key on that. But first we got to add in a track. So let's go ahead and click the plus track, actor to sequencer. I'm going to add in my sphere. So I can add it in just like that. And then I'm going to set a key right here on all of the transforms. So you'll see I have keys on everything. And I like to do that typically at the very first frame. Just that way I know that's where it's going to be. And then to start, we're just going to animate our Z attribute, our up and down motion for the ball. And we're just going to get that going. So first things first, I'm going to go to frame 10 and I'm going to animate this down. So if I come in here and I hit control and I use both my left and right mouse buttons, it's going to move this down. I don't have to actually be touching this or holding it. I can have my mouse over here to the right. If I hold down control, it'll move it over there for me. I'm going to go another 10 frames. I'm going to hold control and go up about halfway between where I was at the top and at the bottom. And then I'm going to come back here. I'm going to copy this by hitting Control C, that key. That's at frame 10. And I'm going to go back to 30, hit paste, Control V. So, and now let's go, I don't know, let's go 8 frames. And I'm going to move it up a little bit, about halfway where it was before. I'm going to go another 8 frames or so, hit paste, and I'm going to go a little bit further. I'm going to go back up, and then I'm going to paste. And I'm kind of shortening the distance between my frames as I go, but I don't want to shorten it too much. So sometimes, you know, I can't just come in here and go 1 frame. It's going to be a little bit too weird. So I'm just doing like this. Paste. And paste. Okay, let's take a look at what that looks like. Wow, looks really bad, doesn't it? So this is what you get when you're animating in the computer and you allow the computer to control all of your in-betweens. So how do we modify this without adding more keys? So I've got position keys here, but this looks terrible. Do I need to start adding a bunch more keys? No, definitely not. Let's go in here into our sequence curves editor. This is the equivalent of like the graph editor in Maya, any function curve editor essentially in any animation program. That's what this is emulating. So I now see that what it's doing is it's just, you'll see it's just literally smoothing out the curve between all of these keys. And that just makes for a really floaty animation. So how can we make it better? So first we can come in here, we can grab all of these keys, and I can hit Control W. That's gonna weight all of my keys. You can also, I think it's this curve up here, so it's, you know, yeah, weighted keys. Weighted keys just allows you to grab this key here and stretch it, or any key, and I'm grabbing the handles for my key. So these are my tangents, and if I have the handles, I can pull this out. And right now, the right and left side are locked together. And in a minute, I'm going to unlock a bunch of them. But first, let's go in and actually modify my the top of my arc, and so that I have uh, a little bit flatter curve at the top. So here, let me do this for all of the keys at the ground level. I'm going to grab all of them, and then I'm going to break the tangent. So breaking the tangent means the right and the left side will move independent of one another. And so now I can move, and you see all of them move, at the same time. So I'm going to come in here, make this one like this, make this one like this, and then I'm just going to go in and start doing the same thing for each. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at this curve in here, this is just the vertical motion of our ball. So when this is flat or relatively flat, the position of the ball is staying the same over time. So we got like 2 or 3 frames here, and the position of the ball doesn't change much because this curve is flat. But when we get to something that's more vertical, especially down here, the difference between its position in one frame and the next frame is significant. It like moves a whole, like the distance of the ball itself. It moves that great of a distance just like that. And that's because this is its position data over time. The more vertical it is, the greater the change in the value. So there you have it. Let's go back in. I wasn't finished doing these yet. So we're going to do it like this. And like this. Notice how this type of a thing is not that uncommon, especially if you're modifying keys in bulk. You'll find that some of your curves are do these weird things, and so this doesn't seem like it's natural. Like here's your position at this key, here's your position at this key, and yet here is the position in between. Well, why did it do that? It's the reason it did that is because these tangents are forcing it to do something a little bit weird. And so you'll get a position that seems odd. So, I go here, and then it goes up, and then it comes back down and to here. Well, I didn't really want it to rise up that high. So if I was to scrub this, it would like go bounce, 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 boink, and it would go way up at that frame just because of this. So keep that in mind if your animation does something weird, or some part of the body, if you're animating a character, does something kind of odd, then it may be because you are you have a function curve or a curve that is doing something a little bit weird. And just take a look. So let's take a look at it now. So we got our bouncing ball. Much better. Not perfect, but much better than it was before. Actually looks like weight is controlling it, or gravity is controlling it, and weight is affecting it. So now you have something where as this sphere or ball is approaching its apex here at the top of its path, it is slowing down because gravity is still pulling it down to the ground. It has inertia, wants to go up, but then it gradually starts to speed up and then falls to the ground and comes back up. So that's why we're doing this. This is timing and spacing. And if you're familiar with Frank and Ollie's book, The 12 Principles of Animation, kind of 2 of the 9 old men at Walt Disney that wrote that kind of the Bible on animation and principles of animation. That's one of the principles, timing and spacing. Your timing would be, where do you place your keys essentially, and your spacing would be how far apart is your object between as you travel along your timeline. are your, if think about this from a traditional standpoint, if you were drawing this on a piece of paper and you had one drawing here and then you jumped to frame 10 and you had another drawing here, well, do you draw, you know, another ball right here and then another one right here and have it super even? That would be even spacing and would look really, and that would that would be a straight line between these two keys. And if you instead, if you have a nice curved line like this, then you draw a sphere here or the ball here, and then the next frame, it barely moves. It hardly moves at all, that next frame. And then the next frame, it barely moves at all. And then it starts speeding up. And then you get down here, and it's moving great distances. So that's just one of the principles of animation, timing and spacing. And that's what we're doing here with just this one function curve. Well, let's make this ball a little bit more believable, or a little bit more interactive with the environment, let's say. So let's go back in here, and I'm going to go ahead and hold down the control key up here and my right mouse button and move this all the way back here to right above the wall. And that's going to auto key because I have auto key on. And then I'm going to move to the very end, and I'm going to drag this over here like this. And so now, if I play it, it goes like that, which is better, but it looks like it speeds up. It kind of like, as it's kind of coming over to the right. So let's come back in here, open up our location, look at our Y function curve, and you can see it's actually not changing Y position much because this is a flat curve, and then it speeds up in Y, and then it slows down. Well, we want it to slow down. We want everything to slow down as it gets over here. But at the beginning, we don't want it to be going slow. So let's change that to be like this. And we can say, there it goes. And now we have it coming in from the wall, slowing in. So oftentimes you'll hear curves talked about in terms of ease in, ease out. And this right here would be an ease in to this key. You're easing into it. So, and this would not be an ease out. This would be more linear out curve or function curve. And so now let's go back in and I want to change and add some roll. So if I go in here and in our roll, we have our key set here. I want to go to the very end, and I just want to grab this attribute. I'm going to type 1080, and let's scrub back a little bit and watch the ball on the ground. It looks pretty good. It looks like it's kind of rolling and attached to the ground like that, and this is where you can tell. So now let's go back to the beginning, and there you have it. Now probably because the default is to have an ease out in that curve. So if I go to this rotation and look at roll, again, it has an ease out here and an ease in. I think that's the default. I actually want to make this more linear out. So now it's coming in. I don't want to go too extreme with it because I liked how it was rolling there at the end. So, and sometimes it's hard to see, just like it looks like it's sliding a bit much right there. So I might want to come in here and just lower this down a bit, like go like this. Yeah, I need to have it come in a little bit higher than that. So let's do that. And sometimes you have to add extra keys in here, but let's do this. That doesn't look too bad. Okay. So there you have it. You have a bouncing ball inside of Unreal animated with our sequencer and modifying just those curves, just a few different curves with our curve editor. Pretty straightforward, not too difficult. Hopefully this was helpful to you. I will show you one other thing that just can be kind of helpful in here. If you do want to create bookmarks for your cameras, you can come in and you can do that just by holding down Control when you're up here in the viewport, and then using any number key. So right now, if I hit the number 1, I jump to this position. Number 2 is just the opposite position, so I can see my uh, my animation from a different angle. Maybe there's a couple different angles that you want to check out, and you just want to jump back and forth. So I can come up here and look at it here. I can look at it here. And if I want, I can hold down my B key and I can scrub. So if I'm up here and I hold down the B key and I just want to scrub through this animation, I can do that. You can also down here, when you're in the sequencer, you can use the J, K, and L keys as like jog shuttle. So L is going to move forward, K is going to stop, J is going to move backwards. If I hit J again, it speeds up. If I hit L, it'll slow it down. If I go back to K, it resets it all, and I can play it forward, etc. So that's your jog shuttle. If I hit Shift Spacebar, it's the same thing as hitting spacebar when you're down here. So if I'm up here in my viewport and I have something selected and I hit Shift Space, it just toggles my playback. And if I'm down here, I can do that with just the spacebar. And that's it. So a few different controls and settings that hopefully will make animating inside of Unreal a little bit more enjoyable. I hope this was helpful for you. And stay tuned for some other helpful videos that hopefully you enjoy.